You try not to take it personally when the old woman at the market spits in your direction. Maybe it's the way your eyes lingered a bit too long on her pickled radish cart. Maybe it's the way you moved, too quiet, too fast. Or maybe she just knows what you are. Because here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to say out loud. Even the peasants, the same ones you pretend to blend in with, live among, protect, and occasionally eavesdrop on, hate you. Not openly, not all the time, but there's a sideways glance, a whisper, a child yanked by the collar when you pass too close. Don't talk to him, they say. He's not normal. And they're not wrong. You aren't normal. You live apart even when you're near. You speak little, listen too much. You know things about people they haven't said out loud. You walk through village streets like smoke, present, but not quite belonging. You were trained to be invisible, but in a small town, there's no such thing as invisible, just unspoken. That's what you've become, a quiet threat, a reminder that some people are watched even when they don't know why. One child calls you a ghost once, straight to your face. You're standing in line for miso paste and he just tugs his mother's sleeve and whispers, "That man isn't real." You smile. The mother does. She bows quickly and drags the child away. You can't even be mad. Because ninja weren't just soldiers or spies. You were symbols of instability, of fear, of the old world when people disappeared in the night and no one asked questions. Historians still argue whether ninja were respected in their communities or feared. The truth, you were both. Maybe you still are. Your skills made you valuable to warlords, but in the eyes of the farmers and fishmongers, you're someone who knows too much, says too little, and survives when others don't. One man once told you, drunk, angry, honest, you're like a walking bad omen. You show up and someone always ends up crying. He wasn't wrong. You've had to bribe your way out of accusations more than once. Being too quiet near someone's granary or appearing on a roof too soon after a chicken goes missing. It doesn't take much. People invent reasons to hate what they don't understand. And ninja, you were built to be misunderstood. You once overheard two farmers talking while you sat behind a rice screen in the temple. One said, "They're not people, they're shadows with feet." The other replied, "I heard one of them drinks snake blood and can talk to crows." You can't talk to crows. But you have drunk snake blood. Once, it was a dare. It tasted like bad fish and regret. Today, you deliver firewood to a house on the edge of the village. A woman answers the door and freezes when she sees you. You bow. She stares. "I thought you were," she begins, then trails off. You wait. "Someone else," she finishes. You nod. You don't correct her. As you stack the bundles, you hear her whispering behind the curtain. "He's the one I told you about, the one who just knows things." You do know things. You know her husband's been slipping out after dark to visit the merchant's daughter. You know she buried money under the floorboard behind the stove. You know she's scared someone will find out. But you say nothing. And that silence is part of why they hate you. You're not part of their lives. You're a reminder of things better left unsaid. Even the local priest avoids your gaze. You helped him once, retrieved a stolen idol from a traveling thief, returned it in perfect condition. No one ever thanked you. Instead, he recited 3 extra blessings at the next festival and glanced at you like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to be grateful or terrified. There's a shrine at the edge of the forest. Small, mossy, largely forgotten. You've left offerings there more times than you can count, not for any god in particular, just because you sweep the steps, replace the incense. No one else ever comes. One day, someone leaves an offering for you. It's a rice ball, carefully wrapped, still warm. You stare at it for a long time. No note, no hint, just food on your usual sitting rock like an apology whispered on the wind. You eat it slowly, gratefully, wondering if maybe, just maybe, someone sees you, not the idea of you. Not the ghost, not the rumor. Just you. Later that week, an old man selling sandals spits as you pass. The rice ball moment fades like a dream. And you keep walking. Because hatred is part of the job, so is loneliness. But so is service. You walk quietly through a world that's never quite trusted you. And you serve it anyway. Because you chose this path. And even if no one claps, no one bows, no one writes your name in the village record, you're still there when it counts. And you always will be. Even if they hate you for it. You pack your things slowly, one item at a time. Your extra sandals, worn thin but still usable. Your wrapped rice balls, the ones with the sour plums for long walks. The old sash with a hidden pocket, the one you stitched yourself. And of course, your tools, rusted but familiar, tucked in their faded cloth like bones of an old friend. You aren't running, not exactly. You're just leaving. Or trying to. Because after everything, after the silence, the pickles, the ghosts, and the headaches, and the general slow erosion of meaning, you've decided it might be time to go, to walk away, to live, if not as someone else, then at least as someone elsewhere. You've heard of other ninja doing it, quietly, settling down in distant provinces, blending into towns where no one remembers who they were, running tea shops, farming seaweed, pretending the old life never happened. But even as you slide your few belongings into a cloth satchel, a pit opens in your gut. Because you know the truth. You can't quit the clan. It's not really. Historians still argue about whether ninja clans enforced loyalty through ideology or fear. In your case, the answer has always been both. There was never a rule written in ink. There didn't need to be. The bond was forged in cold rivers, in bruised knuckles, in whispered mantras and sleepless nights. You didn't sign a contract. You bled one. You pause, sitting on the edge of your mat, staring at the weapons rack. There's a missing blade there. Taro's, probably. No one filled the space. No one ever does. You de-hoped that maybe, if you faded gently enough, the clan would simply forget. That they'd let you go like a lost breath on the wind. But you remember what happened to Osamu. He left. Or tried to. They found him a year later in a fishing village under a different name, running a candle shop. His cause of death was never clear. Some say illness. Others, a knife in the dark. A final warning carved without ceremony. No one talks about him now. Even Gyro, loose-lipped and half-drunk most nights, refers to him only as the one with the wax. You tell yourself you'd do it differently. You'd disappear completely. Not just change villages, but vanish. Walk into the woods and let the wind rewrite you. Live as a hermit, maybe. Write bad poetry. Breathe freely. But then Haru walks in. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. His eyes drop to your packed satchel, then lift to your face. And there it is, the look. Not accusation, not disappointment. Just inevitability. Leaving, he asks softly. You consider lying, but what's the point? I thought about it. He nods, as if you'd said you were thinking of changing your breakfast routine. You know the rules. There are no rules. He gives you a long look. Exactly. That silence stretches, then breaks. I get it, he says finally. Sometimes I think about it too. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Then I remember I've got nowhere else to go. You both stare at the fading light outside the door. You could leave. You still could. Right now. Walk into the twilight and keep walking until even your memories stop recognizing the path. But would it be freedom? Or just exile? The clan may not hunt you, not right away, but they'd know. And knowing, that changes things. The next time you pass a shadow on the road, you'd flinch. The next time a message came in code, you'd wonder if it was for you, or about you. And what if something happened? What if the world shifted again? If peace shattered like a lacquer bowl, and suddenly the skills you buried became valuable once more? Would you return? Would they take you back? You set the satchel down slowly, fold your blanket, pour water into the kettle. You stay. For now. You don't unpack, you just pause. There's no formal punishment for leaving, no ceremony, but you know the stories. Every clan does. Tales of those who broke the thread, who disappeared and were never heard from again, or worse, who were seen, reappearing as ghosts in their own legends, wandering the edges of the old compound like regrets. You sip tea with Haru. Neither of you says anything more. Later that night, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling. You're not trapped. You're tethered. And the line may be invisible, but it's strong. You can't quit the clan. You can only drift at the edge of it, like a kite that's pretending it can fly without a string. And maybe, one day the wind will change. Until then, you stay. Because walking away isn't freedom, not if you're looking over your shoulder the whole way. The last time someone flirted with you, it was because they thought you were mute. You were delivering firewood to the tea house, silent as usual, when the hostess smiled, leaned a little too far over her tray, and said, "You have sad eyes. I like that." You bowed, murmured something about the weather, and backed away like a startled raccoon. She didn't follow up, just called out, "Come back tomorrow, quiet man," in a voice that could have been teasing or mocking. You didn't go back. Not because you weren't interested, but because you couldn't risk it. Because in your line of work, romance has always been conditional, calculated, strategic. You remember your first relationship, if you can even call it that. You were barely 16, still learning how to blend in at festivals, when your handler assigned you to charm a merchant's daughter. She was older than you, sharp-witted and suspicious. You complimented her hair. She asked if you were a pickpocket. 2 weeks later, you had her father's entire inventory list memorized and a copy of his shipping schedule buried under your mattress. She never kissed you, but she did press a sweet rice dumpling into your hand once, without a word, and you almost forgot what you were supposed to be doing. Almost. Because someone was always watching. Sometimes your sensei, sometimes your own conscience. Either way, you were never fully in anything, just next to it, playing a role, wearing the smile someone trained you to wear. Historians still argue whether ninja were encouraged to seduce targets as part of espionage. You've read those debates. You've lived those debates. The answer is yes, quietly, awkwardly, and often with a knotted stomach. You've held hands with people whose names you never knew, whispered promises you never meant, smiled at candles over a meal that tasted like ash. Because intimacy wasn't a luxury, it was a weapon. And when the job was over, you vanished. You remember one woman, Tama, who almost made you stay. She ran a calligraphy shop in Kyoto with ink-stained fingers and a laugh like wind chimes. You met her while tailing her cousin. You stayed long after the mission ended. She knew something was off. You never slept deeply. You knew exactly how many floorboards creaked in her shop. You folded your robes like a soldier. Once, you disarmed a man in the market before he even finished drawing his blade. She never asked, but she knew. And when you left, she didn't cry, just handed you a small paper crane and said, "Whatever you're doing, I hope it's worth it." You kept that crane in your satchel for years, until it disintegrated from rain and sweat and guilt. You've never told anyone about her. Not even Haru. And certainly not Gyro, who treats love like a ghost story, something he claims to have seen once but can't quite describe without giggling. Nowadays, romance is even harder. You're older, quieter. Your face is lined from sun and secrets. You spend your days chopping wood, not charming dinner companions. And when you do speak to someone with a bit more sparkle in your voice, they either assume you're married, mad, or trying to sell them something. Once, a young courier winked at you while handing off a scroll. You stared blankly, then thanked her in the most formal dialect you knew. She laughed and said, "You're hopeless." She wasn't wrong. You've trained your body to respond to danger, your mind to anticipate betrayal. But your heart, that part of you was cordoned off long ago, like a room in a burning house that no one dares enter. You've read poetry. You've studied gestures, eye movements, the language of courtship used by nobles and poets alike. But you've never let yourself fall. Not completely. Because falling means exposure. And exposure is unacceptable. You once heard a joke, told in the back of a tavern by a man who claimed to know real ninja. They don't marry, they don't love, they just vanish before breakfast. You laughed harder than you should have. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if you stopped vanishing. If you let someone close enough to see past the quiet, past the mask. But then you remember, masks are safer than mirrors. One of your old missions involved shadowing a samurai's mistress. She'd grown suspicious. You were tasked with finding out if she was leaking secrets to a rival clan. She was. She was just lonely. She used to sit by the koi pond and write letters to no one, then burn them under the moonlight. You watched her for weeks, learned her habits, her fears, her dreams. When the mission ended, you recommended no action be taken. You never told anyone she reminded you of yourself. Lonely, hidden, waiting. These days, people don't ask you about your love life. They assume there isn't one, that you're either too strange, too old, or too tired. Maybe they're right. Or maybe your heart is just another tool in your kit, carefully wrapped, rarely used, but sharpened enough to still cut. Tonight, you sit under the stars with a cup of tea, listening to the wind. You think about Tama. You think about the courier. You think about all the people you almost let in. And you wonder if, in another life, you might have been a husband, a lover, a man who touched without calculation. But this life was never built for softness. Only silence. And so you sip your tea, breathe deep, and let the moment pass. Because romance was never for you. Unless it came with a mission. You overhear it in the market, between the squash and the salted eel. The magistrate's youngest son dyed his dog's fur red. His mother fainted. You nod to yourself, pretending to inspect a turnip. That little morsel, worth more than a whole pouch of coins, not because it matters, but because it might. Because your best weapon isn't steel. It's gossip. Gossip, when used correctly, is sharper than any blade you've ever hidden in your sash. It cuts reputations, undermines alliances, and flips power structures without drawing a drop of blood. And in the peaceful, too quiet world of Edo Japan, gossip is practically currency. You remember your first lesson in it. You were a boy, still trying to figure out how to walk silently without tripping on your own hakama, when your sensei made you sit in a tea house for 6 hours without moving, speaking, or sipping the tea in front of you. Listen, he said, not for the obvious, for the useful. At the time, you didn't understand. The room was full of chatter about rice yields, wedding preparations, and the new temple mural that looked suspiciously like a famous kabuki actor. You came back with nothing. Your sensei thwacked you on the head with a fan and said, "You heard sound, not meaning." Now, decades later, you hear it all. You hear when the town doctor buys extra herbs on a day no one is sick. You hear when the carpenter's apprentice uses formal speech with a merchant's daughter. Formal speech, which no one his age uses unless he's trying to impress her family. You hear when a rice shipment arrives late, but the village head still hosts a feast. Every whisper is a thread, and if you follow the thread long enough, you reach something useful, a secret, a weakness, an opportunity. Historians still argue whether ninja relied more on combat or intelligence gathering. You never understood why that was even a question. If you fight, you might win. If you know, you've already won. You spend hours each week shopping, praying, or visiting, all while your ears collect tidbits like a basket catches falling leaves. You don't care that the mayor's wife has taken up fortune-telling, but you do care that she's been meeting with the tax official's cousin in secret. That's a connection. That's leverage. One time, a merchant insulted your firewood as overly dry. 3 days later, you casually mentioned, in passing, that his cousin had been seen at the brothel during temple hours. You didn't say it loudly. You just said it near someone who listens professionally. That merchant now bows to you when you pass. Your ears are tuned to scandal like a lute string. You catch shifts in tone, breath, pauses too long between names. A stumble in speech tells you more than an entire confession. Your favorite source, the bathhouse. People assume steam makes them invisible, It doesn't. It just makes them careless. You've learned of betrayals, debts, pregnancies, bribery, and bad poetry, all while pretending to scrub your shoulders. You've trained to decode gossip as if it were code, and it often is. He's taking long walks again equals someone is planning something. She's wearing red on the wrong day equals sign of protest. They served persimmon instead of pear equals a feud is brewing. You keep a mental catalog, names, associations, secrets. You never write it down, too risky, too permanent. But you remember everything. You once prevented a duel by whispering a false rumor about a samurai's embarrassing rash. He stormed off to treat it instead of drawing his blade. Lives saved, pride bruised, all with a whisper. Another time, a clan leader requested a quiet audit of his servants. You found the leak by noting who changed their hairpin after a noble's visit. No need for confrontation, just suggestion, a hint, and she left town. Sometimes, you don't even need to speak. You just raise an eyebrow at the right moment, and people think you know something. And their fear does the rest. Your legend grows not from action, but from implication. You sip tea slowly, nod meaningfully at nothing, and let them wonder. Are you watching them? Do you know? Should they be worried? The answer, of course, is yes. Always yes. You've long since stopped being surprised by what people will say when they think no one important is listening. And you are never important. Just the quiet man in the corner, or the odd wood seller, or the temple cleaner who bows too deeply. They talk over you, around you, through you. Which is how you get what you need. Tonight, you write a coded scroll. Not about a mission, but a pattern you've noticed. A trade deal that might signal something larger, or nothing, but you record it anyway. Because in your world, the one crumb no one notices might later be the pressure point that topples a castle. You roll the scroll, seal it with a smudge of ink that looks like a fish hook, your own private symbol for gained through loose lips. You place it carefully under the floorboard beside your bed and sleep soundly. Because your blades might be rusty, your back might ache. But your ears are sharper than ever. And your best weapon never misses. You bow low at the gate, hands tucked modestly in your sleeves, sandals leaving quiet impressions in the moss. The temple bell rings once as you step inside, deep, deliberate, echoing like someone striking the hollow of your ribs with memory. You're not here to pray. Well, not exactly. You're here for the network. Temples, for all their incense and chanting, are the quiet, beating heart of information in Edo Japan. Pilgrims flow through them like river water, carrying stories, worries, lies, and gossip. Monks hear things. Monks repeat things, not always directly, but in that roundabout, half-mystical way that means you have to listen twice to catch the truth. Temples are your Wi-Fi. You once explained this metaphor to Gyro. He stared at you like you de-invented kabuki theater on the spot. You didn't bother clarifying. It just made sense in your head. Today, the temple is quiet. That means something important already happened, or is about to. You nod to the monk sweeping the steps. He nods back, just a little too slowly. Ah, acknowledgement code 3. Message inside. You slip off your sandals, pad silently through the wooden corridors and settle in the corner of the main hall, pretending to examine a scroll about karmic rebirth. What you're actually doing is watching for the incense rhythm. Every temple has one. Short stick, long stick, then short again. Except today it's long, short, long. New code. Something changed. You wait 5 minutes, 10. A young acolyte brings tea barely bows, but the way she sets the tray, slightly off-center. Another signal. You sip once, then tuck your hand into your sleeve and press your knuckle against the inside of your wrist. The confirmation gesture. The monk returns, dusts the altar without looking at you, and hums softly. It's a tune you know. The cat has caught the beetle. Meaning, a courier has been intercepted, probably one of yours. You don't flinch, you finish your tea, bow, leave. Outside, you take the long way home, along the irrigation ditch behind the carp pond, past the incense vendor who always overcharges. You're not worried, not yet. But you're listening. Temples have always served double duty for people like you. Sacred space above, secret space below. Literally, sometimes. You once slept in a hidden alcove behind a Buddha statue for 3 nights. The statue's gaze still haunts your dreams. Historians debate whether temples officially cooperated with shinobi. Of course not. Officially, nothing exists. But monks have eyes, and eyes see coin, or danger, or opportunity. And while many truly believe in balance and compassion, they also understand the importance of not asking too many questions. You've met monks who speak 5 dialects, can recite 500 sutras from memory, and casually mention troop movements like they're debating rainfall patterns. One monk used to pass messages by adjusting his calligraphy. A longer tail on a character meant danger. A missing stroke meant go now. You once got an entire assignment from the way he miswrote the word vegetable. You're not proud of everything you've done under temple roofs. You once spied on a noble's tryst from the rafters of a meditation room. Another time, you used a ritual drum to send coded vibrations across the floorboards. Once, you replaced the offering rice with a message scroll sealed inside a hollow gourd. That one almost backfired. The high priest nearly cooked it for lunch. But temples are neutral ground, which means they're valuable ground. No one suspects the man praying too long at the altar. No one questions the tired traveler meditating in the corner. And the best part, people talk in temples. They confess. They mutter. They scheme, assuming the gods are too polite to gossip. You once overheard a samurai admit to forging tax documents, just loud enough for the statue of Jizo to hear. You passed the word to a contact, and the forger's accidental reassignment happened within a week. Spiritual justice, courtesy of a man in soft slippers and a sharp memory. Tonight, you return to the temple under cover of dusk. A lantern glows at the outer gate, a new code. Return within. Inside, the monk kneels at the altar. You kneel beside him. He clears his throat and whispers without moving his lips. Courier caught. No scroll recovered. Suspected leak inside local merchant guild. You breathe slowly, evenly. Then, you're certain. The cat had dirt on its paws, he murmurs. Code for witness saw escape through garden. You both rise at the same time, bow in perfect sync. The incense smoke curls toward the ceiling like a question that's already been answered. Later, you burn a coded message in your brazier at home, watching the ash drift upward. You don't have a network of informants, not in the traditional sense. You have monks. You have incense. You have tea trays and chant rhythms, and a set of bells that ring with meaning only if you've memorized the right cadence. No scrolls, no scripts, just smoke and silence. You lie on your mat, hands folded over your stomach, breathing in the memory of sandalwood and secrets. Tomorrow, someone will ask you if you've heard anything interesting. You'll shrug. You always shrug. Because no one suspects the quiet man lighting incense at dawn. And yet, from the temple to the town square, the web stretches wide. Unseen. But listening. Always listening. You're up before the rooster. Not because you're eager. Because it rained last night, and the rice paddy will be sludge by mid-morning if you don't get there now. You tie on your conical straw hat, sling a hoe over your shoulder, and walk the path past the village with the resigned grace of someone who's about to spend the day pretending they belong to a profession they never really trained for. You are, in theory, a farmer. In reality, you are a ninja pretending to be a farmer. And you're not very good at it. Your rows are uneven. Your grip on the hoe is too high. You plant with the caution of someone who expects the soil to explode. A real farmer moves with muscle memory. You move with suspicion. Still, you've kept up the act for years. Because nothing says, harmless, like dirty hands and a sunburn. Blending in has always been your specialty. And in a world where open blades bring questions and silk robes breed suspicion, there's no better cloak than calluses and tan lines. Historians still argue whether ninja worked the land between missions or simply posed as farmers to mask their movements. You'd laugh if it didn't make your back hurt. The answer is both. You've spent more time with your hands in the earth than holding a blade. You know how to check soil acidity by smell, how to spot the first signs of rice blight, how to chase off sparrows without actually hurting them. You've even learned how to laugh at farming jokes. Mostly. But it's still an act. You don't feel like a farmer. Farmers love the land. You monitor it, measure it, bury things in it. You've hidden tools in furrows, coded messages under flat stones, and once, memorably, used a row of carrots to indicate the direction of a fleeing target. You pulled them all later. No one ever noticed. Today, you're planting late summer beans. It's not glamorous. It's barely satisfying. But it lets you watch the road from the right angle, and that's all you really care about. Your neighbors talk while they work. You listen. Did you hear about the shrine? Strange footprints. The merchant's son broke an ink stone. Cursed now. That woodcutter's too quiet. Something's off. That last one's about you. You don't respond. Instead, you adjust your hat and move to the next row. Your tools are disguised. Your spade has a hidden blade in the handle. Your water gourd has a false bottom with a rolled-up scroll inside. Your seed pouch contains exactly 3 small darts, just in case. Every movement you make is calculated. Even when you wipe sweat from your brow, you use the opportunity to scan the tree line. Because being a farmer doesn't mean you stop being a ninja. It just means your battlefield is now a flooded plot of land, and your enemy is suspicion. You once used a scarecrow to pass a message. The hat indicated the meeting location. The way its arms were tied gave the time. No one questioned it. One villager even complimented your excellent craftsmanship. You nodded solemnly and didn't explain that the straw was laced with pepper powder. You eat lunch beneath a persimmon tree. Your rice ball is warm. Your tea is lukewarm. Your legs are tired. You think about quitting again. But there's something comforting about the routine. Pretending to be a farmer has started to feel less like a lie and more like camouflage that fits too well. Sometimes you forget to switch off the persona. You bow too deeply at the market. You comment on rainfall like it matters. You once caught yourself humming a harvest tune. And then there are the dreams. You dream of planting seeds that bloom into smoke bombs, of rice stalks that whisper secrets in the wind, of standing before a field and not knowing if you're growing crops or burying history. You sigh. A bird lands nearby and watches you. You freeze. Not because the bird is dangerous, but because it's not the same one you saw yesterday. You mark its wing pattern, slightly lighter, could be a signal, could be nothing. You jot it down later in your field journal, between notes about water levels and when your neighbor's son started wearing a new sash. All data matters. Even out here. Especially out here. Because in a peaceful era, no one suspects the farmer. And that makes you powerful. You head back at dusk, tools slung over your shoulder, the smell of wet soil clinging to your skin. Gyro passes you on the path. He raises an eyebrow at your muddy state. You look like you actually worked today. You grunt. I actually did. He smirks. Careful, you might get promoted to scarecrow. You don't smile, but you also don't throw a bean at his head, so that's growth. At home, you remove your muddy outer layer, check your traps, read the coded message left under your water barrel, just a note from Haru. Don't trust the monk with the lazy eye, and sip tea. You stare at your hands. They look like a farmer's hands. They feel like a ninja's. And both truths can exist at once. Because this is your field. Your cover. Your battlefield. And tomorrow, it all starts again. You're crouched on a rooftop, half hidden behind a paper lantern shaped like a carp, and your first thought is, this used to be fun. Your second thought is, that drum is entirely too loud. It's the Spring Lantern Festival in the village, one of the few nights each year when everyone forgets how tired they are and pretends their neighbors aren't judging their dancing. Color floods the streets, paper fans, silk robes, dangling decorations strung from every roof beam. Children run shrieking down the alleys, smearing syrup on each other's sleeves. Lanterns bob like fireflies caught in a breeze. Somewhere nearby, a flutist is either wildly intoxicated or inventing a new key. The smell of grilled squid and sweet rice cakes curls up into your nostrils, comforting and faintly nauseating. And you're watching it all from above, jaw clenched, knees aching, one hand on a throwing spike you probably won't use. Because festivals are a nightmare. Not for normal people. For them, it's a celebration, music, masks, and excuses to forget the endless routine of fieldwork and taxes. But for you, it's chaos. A blur of faces, flickering shadows, and far too many people bumping into each other with their hands, accidentally, brushing your coin pouch. Your training tells you to scan every crowd for inconsistencies. Every laugh could mask a signal. Every lantern could hide a weapon. You once saw a message passed via the pattern on a woman's obi, 3 plum blossoms stitched where there should have been cranes. It said, "Follow her, quietly." You did. That night ended in a rooftop chase, a dropped ledger, and a fishmonger's suspiciously generous donation to the temple the next day. You haven't relaxed at a festival since. Historians love to paint ninja as loners, but festivals are where information spills like overfilled tea. Drunk samurai loosen their tongues. Merchants brag. Dancers whisper. Was your job to catch it all. And despite no official mission tonight, old habits claw at your senses. So you crouch, watching. Down below, a masked dancer twirls, red silk fluttering. Her mask is a fox. It used to mean something. I see you. But now it's just a festival motif, probably. Unless it is. You track her movement. Fluid, sharp. She's not just dancing for fun. Her footwork is too precise, her turns too measured. You lean in. She drops a paper fan. You blink. A fan painted with ink swirls that resemble water. But if you tilt your head just right, they form a sequence. It's a code, one you haven't seen in years. 4 steps west, 2 back, wait. She's gone before you finish reading. You slip down from the roof and into the crowd. No one notices. Or they pretend not to. You weave between revelers, duck behind the sake stall, count your steps. 4 west, 2 back. You end up beside a takoyaki vendor. He grins. You look tense. You nod politely. He hands you a skewer. No charge, you take it. Beneath the first grilled ball is a folded scrap of parchment. You pocket it, give a quick bow, and vanish down an alley. You read the note by lamplight later. It's nothing earth-shattering, just a name. One you recognize. One that shouldn't be back in this province. You burn the paper, eat the takoyaki. The next morning, the village will be sticky with confetti and regret. But tonight, your world sharpens again. For the first time in weeks, you feel like something's shifting. And you don't know if that excites you or exhausts you. You slip back into the crowd. Someone hands you a rice cake. A child tugs at your sleeve and points at a floating lantern shaped like a boar. You smile, just barely, and vanish again. You pass Gyro dressed as a rooster, dancing terribly. You whisper, "Your left foot's giving you away." He trips, you keep walking. You end the night on the temple roof, eating your free snack while the villagers light their final sky lanterns. Each one carries a wish. You used to make one too. Now you just watch them rise, soft lights drifting into the dark, like secrets hoping for permission to become stars. You don't make a wish tonight. You don't need to. Because someone sent a message. And that means you still matter. Even at a festival. Your name hasn't been spoken aloud in years. Not your real name. The one your mother gave you. The one your sensei used exactly once before replacing it with something that sounded like a nickname, but actually meant useful tool. The name carved into the clan ledger, filed away with the others who retired, or disappeared, or simply stopped coming back. Technically, you're dead. It's not official, of course. There's no funeral, no grave, just a quiet line on a scroll marked with a charcoal smudge. A notation that you've gone to the wind. A bureaucratic shrug that says, don't ask where. Just assume they're not coming back. You found out by accident, stumbled across the list while cleaning the storeroom. Your own name, with the date from last spring written in faded ink. You blinked. Then you put the scroll back. Didn't mention it to anyone. Because in some ways, it was a relief. When you're dead, no one expects you to report in. No one sends you on missions. No one bothers you for updates, for intelligence, for silence at the wrong moments. You can rest, sort of. But it also means something deeper. You're unmoored. You're no longer part of the system. The clan sees you as done, expended, a tool that dulled and was set aside. And yet, you're still here. Still sweeping the dojo. Still practicing forms in the courtyard. Still listening, watching, waiting. You're not dead, you're just invisible. Which, admittedly, is not new. Historians often debate how ninja identities were tracked, if at all. The romantic stories say you had false names, layered codes, elaborate masks. The reality, you were cataloged like equipment. If your name disappeared, it meant someone gave up on you. Or chose to protect you. You don't know which it was. Maybe it was Haru. He has access to the registry. Maybe he saw how thin you'd become, how quiet. Maybe he thought he was doing you a favor. Or maybe it was an accident. Doesn't matter. Now, you belong to the dead. It comes with perks. You no longer have to attend clan meetings, which were increasingly just awkward silences and arguments about firewood inventory. You don't get requests for missions. You don't get blamed when the temple bell is rung at the wrong hour. You're free in a way that's terrifying. Because when you're dead, you're not responsible. But you're also not seen. You try it out, test the limits. You walk through the village without your usual precautions. You loiter. You eavesdrop with less care. You even stop bowing to the old men who have never trusted you. No one stops you. No one acknowledges you at all. One child points and says, "That man looks like he crawled out of a well." His mother pulls him away. "SHH," she says. "He's not for talking to." You laugh quietly. Then keep walking. You stop checking your signal lines. Stop leaving coded pebbles by the river. Stop answering the monks' oddly worded sutras. The world doesn't collapse. No one comes knocking. You begin to wonder, if you are dead, what kind of ghost are you? One day, you run into a young courier, sharp-eyed, wiry, with the posture of someone who's either been trained or is about to be. She startles when she sees you, bows too deeply. You squint. "Do I know you?" you ask. She hesitates. "They said you were gone." "I am." She frowns. "Then who am I talking to?" You smile. "A story." Later, she leaves something at your door. A scroll, no seal, no message. Inside, a single character. "Return." You don't answer. But you do sweep the courtyard a little more carefully the next day. You light incense at the clan altar. You sharpen your blade. Not because you've decided to live again, but because you want to choose what that means. You're not dead. You're untethered. And there's power in that. To be presumed gone means no one watches you, No one expects anything, which means you can go where you want, see what others can't. Become the ghost in the corner of every map, the question mark in every plan. You sleep well that night. No dreams. No regrets. Only the soft hum of the wind outside, like someone whispering your name, the real one, the one no one remembers. And you. You remember everything, especially how to haunt. You sit beneath the eaves, sharpening a blade you haven't used in years. It's a habit more than a necessity. The edge will never be perfect again. Too many nicks, too much rust in the metal's memory. Like you. Across the courtyard, Gyro is practicing a kata with a wooden staff. His movements are clumsy, over-exaggerated. For the benefit of someone watching, maybe. You're not sure anyone still bothers. He pauses to catch his breath, sees you watching, and says, "Still waiting for your noble death." You grunt. Because you gave up on noble a long time ago. You don't believe in honor anymore. You used to, or at least you were trained to mimic it. Serve with silence, die without praise. Honor is invisibility. That was the mantra, over and over, drilled into your spine by men who rarely left the compound and judged worth by the absence of noise. You repeated it, you taught it, you lived it. But somewhere along the way, you started to wonder, who does that honor actually serve? The samurai had it easy. Their honor was loud, flamboyant even. Swords polished, oaths shouted, deaths dramatic and public. A samurai could ride into a battle, scream their family name, and die in a flurry of banners. You once fell off a roof because the clay tile cracked, and the only person who noticed was a stray dog. Your honor was supposed to be in how you didn't scream on the way down. Historians still argue whether ninja were outcasts or disciplined warriors. The truth is, you were whatever your employer needed you to be. Scapegoat, savior, spy. You performed honor like a play, even when you knew the script was rigged. You remember a mission, years ago in a seaside town. You were to intercept a courier carrying land deeds that would devastate 3 fishing villages. You succeeded, burned the scrolls. The villages were saved. The Lord who hired you, he had you arrested the next day for theft. You were released eventually, quietly, no apology, no explanation. Honor didn't come up once. Later, you heard he built a summer home on that land anyway. You walk the perimeter of the compound now, tracing your usual route. The gate creaks in a way that annoys you, so you oil the hinge with the leftover fat from last night's fish. Not because anyone told you to, just because it shouldn't creak. That's what you've replaced honor with, maintenance. You keep things from falling apart. The floorboards, the paths, the discipline of your limbs. It's not glorious. It's not poetic. But it's real. You once asked Haru if he still believed in honor. He blinked at you and said, "I believe in clean water and sharp knives." Gyro believes in neither. He believes in stories. He once tried to write a play based on your life. You found it under his mat. Act I, the silent blade. Act I, betrayed by the shadows. Act I, redemption in moonlight. You nearly choked on your rice ball. There is no redemption in moonlight. There is only cold stone, and the satisfaction of knowing the trap you set was never triggered. You stand before the clan altar tonight, looking at the offerings left behind. A wilted flower, a crumbling rice cake. Someone carved the word loyalty into a piece of bark and left it there like a message to the gods. You almost laugh. Loyalty, yes. But honor. Honor is a luxury. And you don't have that kind of wealth anymore. You honor your tools, your craft, the small routines that keep you sane. You bow to the dojo before training, not because it's expected, but because it's yours. The only space in the world that still echoes your footsteps. You clean your blade, not to impress anyone, but because it feels wrong to let it rot. You stay alive, even when no one's asking you to. Is that honor? You don't know anymore. You think back to the farmer who caught you stealing a melon during a drought. You were half-starved, trying to avoid breaking cover. He saw you, stared for a long moment, then turned and walked away. He left the next melon on the fence post. You left 2 fish in return. No words, no debts. Just balance. You believed in that. Still do. The rest, you've let go. You sleep that night without dreams. Your blade is clean. Your back is sore. And your hands still remember how to tie the perfect knot. Not for ceremony. Not for pride. Just because that's what keeps the roof from caving in. It's a lie, really. A good one, a necessary one, but a lie. You don't vanish. It's not really. You don't melt into shadows or disappear in a puff of smoke or reappear behind someone and whisper something cryptic before they collapse in awe. That's kabuki theater. You just leave early. Slip away before people realize they were looking. You walk softly. You know where the floorboards groan and where the dogs sleep and where the nosy old man stands every morning watching for scandal. You avoid him. You avoid everyone. And when you're gone, people say you vanished. You let them believe it. Because that's the closest thing you have to power now. You sit beneath a tree on the temple hill, watching a group of children play tag. One points at another and shouts, "I'm the ninja!" Then he crouches behind a barrel and breathes loudly through his nose. You smile. He's doing it all wrong, but he believes it. And that's the point. You used to try disappearing in truth, holding your breath until your ribs ached, flattening your body behind garden walls, climbing trees so still birds would land on your shoulder. You practiced not being seen until it was your only skill left. Now, you walk past people every day who don't see you. But it's not because of stealth. It's because they don't want to see you. You've become furniture, a fixture, a background presence that flickers in and out of their consciousness like a draft. Gyro says that's a win. And if they forget you exist, he said last week, you can do anything you want. You asked if that included taking the last rice ball from the pot. He grinned and said, especially that. Historians love the idea of vanishing. Of ninja who could slip through walls, melt into shadows, become mist. They write poems about it, paint it on scrolls, but you've never vanished. You've deflected. You've redirected. You've anticipated sightlines and taken advantage of bad lighting and worn the right shade of brown to blend in with thatched roofing. But you've never not existed. The first time you realized that was during a mission in Edo, tailing a merchant suspected of laundering money through temple donations. You followed him for 3 days, always in plain sight, just one step behind, wearing the same rough robe as the dockhands. You coughed when he coughed, moved when he moved. He never saw you. He passed you every day. He even handed you a fish once, thinking you were a delivery boy. You didn't vanish. You just became part of his world. And when the scroll was finally handed off, and you intercepted it without breaking pace, you didn't disappear into a puff of smoke. You slipped into a doorway, walked through a side alley, changed your sandals. That was it. You vanished. And they never found the scroll. It's not magic. It's patience. You train it every day, not the climbing or the weapons or the memorized codes, but the art of exiting, of folding into the fabric of a crowd, of leaving before someone realizes they were supposed to notice you. You practice eye contact, exactly 0.7 seconds, then down and away. You practice the nod, just one, friendly, not familiar. You practice holding objects, baskets, firewood, brooms, not as props but convincingly. If you look like you belong, no one checks. You once stood in front of a magistrate's estate for 20 minutes holding a potted plant. No one questioned it. You were the plant man. Who questions the plant man? You remember an old saying, to disappear, don't hide, become what they expect. And now, they expect nothing. You sweep temple paths, you chop wood, you walk the alleys, and no one sees you, even when they look straight at you. You go home that night and take off your robe. Underneath, you're wearing another layer, faded, patched, practical. The outer robe is your public one, the one they recognize. You drape it on the hook by the door. Now you are less visible, but not gone. You never really vanish. You just stop giving them reasons to remember you. You boil water, wash your hands, scratch your cat behind the ears. Then you light a single candle, enough to cast long shadows on the far wall, enough to test how well your body disappears in that light. You sit, still as stone, for 10 minutes. No one comes, no one calls. Outside, the village celebrates some minor holiday, bells and laughter and drums. You don't attend. You're not expected. You're not remembered. And that's exactly how you like it. Because when the day comes, and it will come, when someone finally whispers, "Where did he go?" you'll already be somewhere else. Watching, breathing, waiting, and absolutely 100% still here. It happens in the tea house, over sake and whisper laughter. You're crouched in the corner, invisible by routine, sipping lukewarm barley tea that tastes like boiled parchment. A merchant, round-faced and full of gossip, leans across the table and says, "They say there's a ninja who lives near the forest. Silent as a ghost. Killed 5 men with a hairpin once." The others gasp. You blink slowly. Because they're talking about you. Probably. Maybe. At least, some stitched-together version of you, a creature made of myth and misremembering. The hairpin story, completely fabricated. It was a chopstick. And nobody died. One man tripped. Another passed out from fear. The third twisted his ankle trying to escape. You were long gone before the commotion started, sipping soup in a different district and wondering if you'd forgotten to lock your window. But now, you're a story, an echo of yourself, a shape passed around like a cautionary tale or a bedtime dare. You are the shadow that parents invoke to stop misbehaving children. You are the whisper behind closed shutters when someone hears a creak at night. You're not a person anymore. You're content, repackaged for drama. And every detail they get wrong pushes you further from the truth. Historians still argue about the real nature of ninja. Were you spies, assassins, mythical constructs built by the Tokugawa regime to justify tighter control? You've read some of the books quietly in the back of the shrine library. They romanticize you, or worse, flatten you. No one wants to hear about the time you spent 3 days disguised as a shrine bell just to catch a single whispered phrase between lovers. No one tells the story of the week you got dysentery in a cave while waiting for a signal that never came. Instead, they want hairpin deaths, dramatic exits, rain-drenched duels where one man bows and the other disappears. You once corrected someone, just once. A teenager at the village gate was boasting about how his uncle once hired a ninja to follow a samurai all the way to Kyoto without ever being seen. You said, "You mean sat 3 carts behind him and bribed 3 gate guards?" He looked at you like you farted during a funeral. After that, you stopped correcting anyone. Let them have their stories. You begin to notice them everywhere. Little phrases, glances, the slight stiffening when you enter a room. He never blinks. Don't step on his shadow. He can kill you with a sigh. You once sneezed during meditation. The old woman 2 doors down hasn't looked you in the eye since. And the strangest part, it helps you. The more ridiculous the stories become, the more people leave you alone. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to explain why you know which merchant is hiding extra rice, or why the temple bell chimes 4 times when it should be 5. You don't have to confess that your greatest skill isn't killing, but noticing. Because they've already made you magic. And magic doesn't explain itself. But sometimes, just sometimes, it hurts. You hear them talk about the ninja, as if you were a stranger, a ghost, a rumor caught in the rafters. You once saved a boy from drowning in the river, pulled him out with one hand, resuscitated him with the other. He remembers someone, but now he says it was a river spirit, that you vanished like mist. You didn't vanish. You just walked home soaking wet and sneezed for 3 days. You watch your life being turned into a play you don't recognize. And it makes you wonder if everyone forgets who you actually were. Did you ever exist? You try to write your own account once. A scroll, plain ink, no embellishments, just the truth. You get halfway through a story about your first mission, a simple observation job at a granary, when you stop. Because it's so boring, so quiet, so real. You burn the scroll. You're not angry, you're just tired. Let them tell it wrong. Let them say you stabbed a man with a feather, that you can vanish in a blink, that your footsteps make no sound even on gravel. Let them craft you out of shadows. Because in the end, they're not really talking about you. They're talking about who they need you to be. Fear, mystery, silence in human shape. And maybe, In that space between truth and fiction, you found something useful. You're a story now. You can go anywhere. Be anyone. Hide in plain sight, like a parable pretending to be a person. You sip your tea in the corner and watch the merchant laugh. He's just told someone you once climbed the shogun's castle wall using only a string of rice noodles. You raise your cup to him. He'll never know the truth, but he'll remember the shape of you. And maybe that's enough. You wake before dawn, as always. But this time, you lie there longer than usual, staring at the wooden ceiling beams, trying to remember why you're supposed to get up. The weight of habit says, stretch, sharpen, sweep. But something else, quieter, deeper, asks for what? You can't answer. You rise anyway. Your knees ache, the old wound on your left thigh twinges in the damp air, and your hands curl stiffly until the fire warms them. You go through the motions, boil water, sip weak tea, check the floor traps you haven't needed in years. You do it all without thinking, and that's the problem. Because lately, you've stopped thinking altogether. Not in a dramatic way, not a loss of consciousness, just a slow, invisible shedding of self, like leaves from a tree that no longer tracks the seasons. Some days you blink and realize you've done an entire morning's training without remembering a single stance. You sweep the courtyard and find your own footprints already there. You used to be someone. You had a name, a place, a function. Now you're just here, still breathing, fading. You glance at your reflection in the water basin. It stares back, hollow-eyed, too thin, grayer than you remember. You could swear your cheekbones used to be higher, or lower, or less angular, you can't quite recall. You mutter your name under your breath, your real name, the one you haven't spoken in years. It sounds strange, like a sound pulled from someone else's throat. Then you stop, because even that might not be right anymore. Historians say ninja erased their identities for safety, but they rarely talk about what happens when you do it too well, when the mask becomes the face, when the fake life becomes the only one with weight. You eat a rice ball for breakfast, halfway through chewing before you realize you've eaten this exact meal for the last 22 mornings. Same rice, same miso, same leftover pickled burdock. You used to vary your routine for security. Now you don't bother, because who would come for you now? You try to remember your first mission, really remember it. You remember the place, sort of. A small house on the edge of a village. You were supposed to watch, nothing more. You were told, if it feels too quiet, don't breathe. But the face of the man you watched, gone. The reason you were sent, also gone. You remember being cold, that's it. You sit in the garden as the sun rises. The light hits the plum tree you planted years ago. You used to care if it blossomed. Now it blooms and fades, and you don't notice. Gyro visits. He talks a lot about sake, about politics, about a dog that bit him and how that probably counts as a duel under local law. You laugh at the right parts. You smile on cue. But you're drifting, watching yourself from somewhere just behind your own shoulder. When he leaves, he claps you on the back. Still sharp, old friend. You nod. But are you? Later, you pick up your blade. Just to hold it. It's familiar, heavy, balanced. But when you swing it, Slow, deliberate, precise, it feels like watching someone else move your arms. Like a puppet you forgot you were controlling. You sit down and write your name again. Once. Twice. A third time, and the brush slips. The ink bleeds. You stare at the smear. You could disappear tomorrow, and no one would know what to call you. Your scrolls are unsigned. Your house has no marker. The villagers refer to you with shrugs and phrases like, "that man who always wears gray." Even you call yourself, less often. You say things like "this one" or "the body" or "the hands remember." And that's the part that scares you. The hands remember. Even when you don't. You don't remember who taught you to tie the climbing knots, but your fingers still do. You don't recall which mission gave you the scar near your hip, but your body flinches if anyone reaches toward it. You don't remember the last time you spoke to someone without scanning the room first, or the last time you cried, or the last time you looked in the mirror and thought, "I am here." You go outside. You kneel. You breathe. The wind stirs the trees. The sun slips behind a cloud. A bird sings a note that reminds you of a woman's voice. Someone you used to know, maybe. Someone whose name once made your chest ache. It doesn't anymore. You whisper the name. It disappears into the wind. Maybe that's what happens when you live too long in the shadows. You stop being cast by the light. You become the absence. Still useful, still present, but forgotten. Even by yourself. You lie on the porch that night, staring at the stars, and make yourself a promise. Tomorrow, you'll tell Haru your name. Even if he doesn't recognize it. Even if you don't believe it anymore. Just to hear it out loud again. Just to remember. Because even if no one else knows who you are, you should. Even now. You hear about it secondhand, over burnt tea and leftover pickles. Haru is gone. You weren't there. No one was. Not when it happened. Not when they found him. Not when they buried him, or whatever version of burial was deemed appropriate for someone who was never meant to exist in the first place. They say it was peaceful, or quick, or quiet. It's hard to know, everyone tells it differently. Jiro says it happened near the stream. The temple boy says it was in the woods. The monk won't say anything at all. There's no grave. Of course there is. Because you never get a funeral. Not as a ninja. You get silence. The mat rolled up, a tool set divided, a cup left unfilled at breakfast. Then the floor is swept, the gear is repacked, the routines adjust. And the world keeps turning. You sit alone on the temple steps at dusk, watching the wind scatter petals from the plum tree. You should say something. A prayer. A chant. A haiku, maybe. But your mouth is dry and your throat catches on the only words that feel honest. He's gone. And now there are fewer of you again. You think back to the last conversation you had with Haru. You were both watching ants navigate the edge of the koi pond. He said, "They don't even know when one of them disappears." You replied, "They don't have the time to notice." Now you wonder, was that a warning, a confession, or just a truth too heavy to carry alone? Historians rarely mention what happened to Ninja in the end. There are no records, no scrolls, no final oaths. Just absence. You're not supposed to mourn people like you. You weren't supposed to exist in the first place. You learned that early on, when a clanmate vanished during training and the only thing said was, "Shift your spacing. There are fewer of you now." No names, no ceremony. Once, when you were young, you asked why. Your sensei stared at you and said, "If you want to be remembered, don't be a shadow." You didn't ask again. But now, you wonder what would happen if you broke that rule. If you marked a stone, lit a candle, spoke a name aloud. You go home, dig through the old supply chest, and find one of Haru's training knives. Still sharp, balanced slightly to the left. He used to say it was his lucky one, though you never saw him use it once. You sit with it in your lap. And finally you speak. His name was Haru. The room doesn't explode. The gods don't curse you. The shadows don't flee. It's just you, the blade and the silence. You carve a small symbol into the wood beside the porch. Nothing fancy, just a single looping line. The way Haru used to sign his sparring logs when he thought no one would see. It feels like something. Not a funeral, but something. Gyro comes by later, sees the mark, doesn't say a word. Just sits beside you. He doesn't ask what happened. You don't explain. But he leaves behind a rice ball, salted plum, Haru's favorite, and one of those stupid paper fans he always insisted on carrying. He lays it down like an offering. And for a moment, you let yourself imagine it means something. That you aren't just the last one still breathing. That memory counts, even if it's quiet. That naming a shadow gives it shape. You stare up at the moon and wonder if it remembers all the faces that disappeared beneath it. Probably not. But you do. You remember Suzu's laugh, Tero's cough, Atsuko's terrible handwriting, Asamu's lopsided sandals, Haru's calm voice, always the first to say, "Wait." You remember, even if no one else does. Because that's all you can do now. Hold the names. Say them when no one else will. Keep their ghosts close, not for protection, but for truth. You never get a funeral. But maybe, just maybe, you can build a kind of shrine. One breath at a time. The dojo is quiet. Not silent. There's always wind, always the creak of old wood, always the distant hum of insects somewhere out of sight, but quiet in that final way. Like a book closing. Like a lantern flickering just before it gives out. You sweep the floor because no one else will. You light the incense because tradition demands it, even if there's no one left to breathe it in. You pause before the clan altar, bow, and murmur a name under your breath, not because it does anything, but because not saying it feels like betrayal. You are the last one left. Not officially, of course. There's no memo, no scroll declaring you the final bearer of fading shadows. But you've counted the mats. You've checked the storage. The beds are cold. The sandals are unmoved. The teacups haven't been used in weeks. No footprints, no coughs, no quiet laughter over bad rice. Just you. And the memory of movement. Once the compound thrummed with quiet efficiency. You could hear the pulse of it in every hallway. The rhythm of bodies moving, training, preparing. You remember the way Haru's sandals dragged slightly. The way Suzu used to hum under her breath while sharpening her blade. Even gyro, always late, always loud, filled space in a way that made you feel like someone was living. Now, even the wind feels hesitant. You sit beneath the plum tree and watch the petals fall. No one planted it, nature did, but you were the one who cleared space for it, watered it, talked to it sometimes when the days got too long. It's blooming again, brilliant, fragrant. You're glad. But it also feels cruel. Historians will never write about this part. They'll write about your kind like you're extinct, like a species that once had purpose, exotic, mysterious, and then faded into metaphor. They won't write about what it's like to remain. To be the last pair of calloused hands, sweeping a training floor no one uses. To keep sharpening blades for no battles. To boil rice for no mouths. To keep routines sacred, even when the gods stopped answering. You once thought you'd die in the field, cornered, bleeding, victorious only in silence. You imagined your final moment under moonlight, disappearing with dignity. But now, you might die in your sleep, one cold spring night, and no one will know. You'll just stop, and the world will move on. It should terrify you, but mostly it's numb. You take inventory. You do it weekly now, out of habit, still write it on thin parchment. Rations, low. Tea, barely enough. Arrows, untouched. Oil, spoiled. Patience, fluctuating. You leave the last line blank. You always do. Because even though there's no one left to read these, you can't stop documenting. The act of recording proves you're still here. Sometimes you wonder, are you supposed to do something? Form a new clan. Find apprentices. Pass on what little you know before your breath fails. But who would you teach? No one wants what you have. The world has moved on. Peace has filled the cracks war left behind. The samurai are bureaucrats now. The shogunate's enemies have either submitted or gone silent. No one needs a man who can scale walls or hold his breath for 2 minutes or disguise himself as a lamp post. You are a solution to a problem that no longer exists. And yet, you're still here. Because no one told you to leave. Because this place, for all its ghosts, still feels like home. And because maybe, just maybe, someone else might find it. Someday. You've left signs, quiet ones, marks only another like you would notice. A scratch on a stone, a plum blossom carved into the edge of a beam. A scroll in the hollow of a tree that ends not with instructions, but with a whisper. If you're reading this, welcome home. You don't know if anyone will come. But if they do, you want them to know they weren't the first. You want them to know someone stayed. That someone kept the flame going, even as it dwindled to a spark. You sit on the porch as evening comes, watching the sky turn gold, then lavender, then dark. You boil water. Make tea. Pour 2 cups. One for you. One for memory. You clink them together in a silent toast. And sip. Not for honor. Not for legacy. But simply because the tea is warm, and the night is cool, and you are still breathing. You are the last one left. And until your last breath, you remain. The wind comes down from the mountains tonight, colder than it should be for this time of year. It slides through the compound like a quiet intruder, rustling reeds, lifting the edges of the old rice paper screens, brushing against your sleeve as if checking. Still here. You are. You're always the one who stays. You rise slowly, bones arguing with the movement. Light the brazier with practiced care. The coals take longer to catch these days, just like your joints, just like your breath in the mornings. Outside, the moon is thin and high, like a watchful eye that's seen too much. You bow to it out of habit, out of hope. You don't know anymore. The compound has begun to decay. The corner of the roof sags. The garden wall leans. A squirrel lives in the weapons storehouse now, and you've decided that's fine. He doesn't talk, doesn't ask questions, leaves the scrolls alone. You talk to him sometimes. He doesn't answer. Which, in fairness, makes him no different from most of your old clanmates. There's no one left now. No missions, no messages, just the routines, sharpen, sweep, bow, breathe. The tiny disciplines that hold the silence together like knots in an unraveling net. Historians, centuries from now, will argue over whether the ninja faded away or simply became irrelevant. They'll debate tactics, discuss ancient weapons, make movies full of smoke and myth. They'll forget the taste of cheap barley tea, the cold of waiting on a rooftop for hours. The ache of knowing your name was never meant to be remembered. But not you. You remember everything. And you're still here. The scrolls in the attic are dry and flaking, but you check them anyway. Recopy one now and then. Change a character. Add a margin note. You think someone will find them someday. Maybe not soon, but eventually. You want them to know this wasn't all fiction. There was a man. He swept the floor of a dead clan. He trained in the morning when no one was watching. He listened to gossip like it mattered. He remembered the names no one else spoke. He drank tea by himself and always poured 2 cups. He stayed. Even when it stopped making sense. Even when the echoes were louder than the living. Even when the world no longer needed him. You lie down with a blanket that smells like dust and plum blossoms. Close your eyes. Let your fingers rest, open-palmed on the floor, as if waiting for a partner in a dance that's already ended. You may not wake tomorrow. Or you might. Either way, there's no curtain to fall. No last mission, no flare of glory. Just you. Still here in the end. Because that's who you are. The one who doesn't vanish. The one who remembers. The one who, when all the others were gone, and the banners fell, and the compound creaked with time's breath, sat quietly beneath the stars and whispered, I am still here.